Hello everyone, I'm Kana Taku. Today, I want to do the level 9 of this book I published with Dr. Iimura, Shuhei Iimura, and Tomoko Matsui in Japan. So at level 7, we collect data. At level 8, we clean and organize the data. So at level 9, we can finally start analyzing the data. When we analyze the data, of course, that's the fun part. It's important that we do this. This whole process should be reproducible, meaning data won't change as time goes by. So when I analyze the data, and if I analyze the data a week later or a month later, my results should be consistent. It's not the luck thing, like, oh man, like when I did that about a week ago, it was significant. I don't remember how I did that. No, that's the problem. Because the data doesn't change, my results should be consistent. And then not just my results, anybody should be able to replicate it, right? So that's what I wanted to talk about today for this level 9. It's really nothing to do with English as the first language or second language. It really doesn't matter, especially if your lab has already built a good system about, for example, pre-registration or using more like the, say like the program-based computer software such as R, and then share your the file in the lab. If you have that kind of like good training or good environment resources, then level 9, like there's really nothing special for the level 9. It's probably that you're always doing it and you just continue doing it, just continue enjoying data analysis and then move on to level 10. But other people who are not that lucky, then we have to kind of like teach ourselves how to analyze the data or how to organize the data, all of these things, just like writing scholarly papers. So even that's the case. So for me, for example, I mainly use SPSS computer software, even though many of my students in my lab don't use SPSS, but I use that one. Then in order to just kind of avoid those minor human errors, there are 4 things I just trying to be careful about whenever I analyze the data. So that's something that I wanted to share with you today. Number 1, do not customize the data. I'm just trying to encourage all of my lab members, and then I do it myself. Meaning, don't customize the data indicates you should have only one master file. That's not easy to do. But whenever we collect data, there should be only one master file. And then, but sometimes we use, for example, from this entire data set, we use only a part of it to make a conference presentation. We sometimes use part of the variables to publish our papers. So the rest of the parts are irrelevant. If they are irrelevant, sometimes we are so tempted to just delete it from our data set and then save it as a different name. Say, for example, this is just for the conference presentation A. Save a different name. So we may have customized multiple data files, even though all of the data are overlapping each other. I try not to do that, and then just use only one master file throughout conference presentations or different manuscripts, always one file. That is very important, because what if I say like present some kind of findings at the conference, and maybe people advise me, say like, oh, you are now presenting the relationships between these 2 variables. Have you had a chance to check if these variables are consistent with some kind of confounding variable or other variables? Then even if I collect that data, if I don't include that variable in my data, then I have to redo it again. But as long as there is one master file, then I can easily replicate it or take that kind of suggestions. It's just having multiple files creates more problems, at least for me. So that's why number 1 advice, or trying to tell myself, is just don't customize the data, just use only one. Number 2, don't use a secret code. I mean, secret code meaning like the people who are not in the lab don't understand. That kind of like almost like a pass. You have to have a password. That's important to protect the privacy. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about more like acronym. Let me like share my screen. So whenever we have the data set directly download from, for example, Qualtrics. For example, I sometimes collect data, from the people in Japan. Then once I download it, all of the labels were written in Japanese. Because these labels were directly downloaded from the Qualtrics, they're not really self-exploratory. It's hard to understand. For example, say when I scroll it, it says, say, IISS 21. What does IISS 21 mean? When I read this label, unless I have to just go through all of this, I don't understand what it means. What about CSIB? Because each question statement or item statement is long, and then Qualtrics automatically download entire items. It's just sometimes not super helpful. For example, has 1 to 14. So what does 1, 2, 3? So that's what I mean by kind of like secret acronym. Whenever I use it, try to explain it in this label, because that way, if I share this data with people in my lab or my colleagues or the researchers who sent me inquiry, they will be able to tell exactly what we did. That's one way to kind of replicate our study. So that's what I was doing for the past 3 weeks between level 8 and the level 9. So let me close this one. Here's the data that I created. So I combined them, couple of the data, but I now have only one master data file. And then whenever I use this acronym, I try to explain under the label column. Whenever I create subscale scores or scale mean scores, then I used this column of the label to explain how I calculated those mean scores. And I did this one for all of the variables. I changed the type of measures, add the values so that everything should be now crystal clear. Then even if people are not familiar with, for example, has one, at least they can search for it. At least they understand what kind of items we use and then how we asked and then how we coded. So that's number 2. Okay. Number 3, every time when you analyze the data or organize the data, just don't forget adding to the syntax. Then anybody can replicate it. Here's my syntax that I used for the past 3 weeks. So you can kind of tell how I recode some of the variables, how I computed the mean scores for subscale scores, how I obtained reliability. Once again, if you are already working in a lab that has this kind of systems built up, then there really is nothing special. But if you don't have that habit yet, then maybe start now. It's easy to replicate it. So that's number 3. The last one, number 4, is take notes. So today is the first day for me to start analyzing data. So I am going to take the notes. Okay. Sometimes I have a bad habit, meaning like I actually take notes by using handwriting. Then I may lose that paper, So that's why it's not really a good idea. I should type it, because if I type it, then I can search for it. So today is June 16th, 2022. So the first day to analyze the data. Usually when I first analyze the data, I want to replicate. I want to see, my purpose is to see if the findings that were previously published can be replicated in our data set. So I just need to make sure that everything is good. And especially now I'm interested in the relationships between values and mental health. So I wanted to do that because I found a couple of articles that, for example, talks about like how people cherish their family, friends and families are associated with or negatively associated with their sense of feeling burdened by society. So that's why I wanted to do that. So when I checked my data set, I assessed 11 different values here. So for example, values 1, avoiding causing trouble, is this important? Positive evaluations, beliefs, is this important for you? So that's why I have this. Extremely unimportant to extremely important. So I wanted to check that, okay? Then, for example, for say this one, enduring, no, not that one, cherishing family and friends. So that's the important one that according to the previous studies, that should be negatively associated with the mental health, like the poor mental health. So I'm gonna get the correlations and then I can use this one still, and then find the values of cherishing family and friends. And then I'm gonna use the subscale scores that I created. And then I put it here. And then I'm just going to get the mean and the standard deviations and continue. And then instead of just clicking OK, just paste it. It's so simple. That way I can leave what I did. And then I usually just copy and paste whatever I did and then put it here. And then it's when I actually run it, you see the results here. It's probably better to, instead of copy and paste, export all of the results into Word document or Excel file. But for me, I still want to take notes because this is really initial stage. I haven't really decided what kind of results I want to publish. So in this case, I sometimes just copy and paste like literally, and then take the notes. Because this way, I can make the notes, and then like my thought process will not stop. So I will say, okay, it is negative. So which means it is supported. So I'm just gonna feel relieved and I can just move on. Can we see the same kind of results, US and Japan, in a similar way? In order to do that, I can make, for example, maybe grouped scatter plot. I like making the graphs, especially at the initial stage, because now I'm still exploring the data set. So I can choose, for example, scatter plot, and then I use values. So that was values, cherishing family and friends, and then my mental health questions that I created for the mean scores. Should be here. NQ, total mean scores. And then I wanted to use country as a set of colors so that I can make grouped scatter plot and then paste it. Should be shown here. So, and then in this case, I just like to even put it in my thoughts process. I'm not curious, not necessarily curious. I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure if the same kind of trend or findings can be observed in both nations, even when I analyze the data separately. So I have this syntax. For this syntax part, I don't want to use screenshot because then there is no way I can copy and paste. So for that syntax, I actually want to directly copy and paste from the syntax. But when I get the actual results, then I don't mind because I can easily replicate it. So my priority is more like that kind of helps me to understand what I get. So, oops. I am just going to make 2 regression lines for each country. And then okay, that's good. So the trend is about the same. So that will not be a problem. But then this should create even more questions, I think. And then those kind of things, I don't want to I know people have a lot of different probably ways to analyze the data. So I may be totally wrong, but at least my practice is I just take the notes. This looks not normal curve because there's so fewer people says the generation family and friends are not important. So we got the negative correlations, but without showing the normal curve. This kind of makes me think that all of the values, because we have 11 values here. We used 11 values. So out of 11 values, all of them are skewed like this. So I'm curious. And then I gotta check, of course, with the previous studies, but in order to do that, maybe potentially, so I can, from this, I can, oops. Now, potentially repeated measures, because I want to know out of 11 values. So maybe I just shouldn't take the notes. I want to know if all 11 values, so not just cherishing family and friends. I want to know if all 11 values show the same kind of score distribution. If so, I should be able to make bar chart. So that's why I always start with kind of like, maybe I'm a visual person, like a visual aid helps me. So I'm going to just create a bar chart instead. And then I wanted to find 11 values. Let's see what we get. So I'm just going to select all of them, put it here, click OK. And then maybe I should display error bars. And then paste it here. Then now I have all the code, what I did. So I can use that one. The next time when I do it, I'm just gonna this one. Okay, now I have syntax. And then let's actually, so maybe there could be probably the better ways to do it, but interesting. So it's not there. But so maybe it is a social desirability thing because cherishing family and friends, the value number 9 is clearly greater than some of the other values. So maybe check repeated measures ANOVA. But if so, because most of the previous studies use each of the value separately. I mean, of course, there may be subscale scores because I saw the factor analytical results and then theoretical dimensions. So some of the values could be combined, of course. But the point is, it's not necessarily the combinations of the different values, because at least the 2 articles that I checked earlier today use the scores for each value almost as predictors and then run the regression analysis, assuming all of the values are independent from each other. So I'm just curious now. So I'm just, whenever I analyze the data, I just kind of talking myself, maybe many people do that too. Just leave it and then just leave it this way. And then I'm just gonna make the notes. So the next step would be to run a repeated measures ANOVA, but I wonder, just ANOVA, but I need to check literature, see how people usually analyze these scores first. Because all of the previous studies that I checked use these scores as a predictor variables, but there may be different ways to do it because some of the values may be affected by social desirability, because otherwise, why is it so high? This is really high. I mean, when I was looking at this scatter plot, I just noticed that there are almost no dots on the lower end. Okay. So anyway, that's the number 4. So today, for this level 9, what I wanted to talk about is finally we are at the stage of analyzing the data. There are 4 things we can be careful about. Number 1, don't customize the data file itself. Use only one master file. Number 2, if you have to use acronym, then explain what they are in the label to make it clear so that everybody can understand what each variable means. Number 3, use syntax so that it will be reproducible. Number 4, take notes. Ideally, Word document or something so that you can search the keywords. Otherwise, sometimes take notes that actually like handwriting, but still better than nothing. I hope this helps, but now at the level 9, so let's just enjoy analyzing the data, and then I'll see you at level 10. Thanks for watching. See you then.